Today's program is generously sponsored by the Knight Foundation, the Downtown Akron Partnership, and Westfield Bank. Additionally, we'd like to recognize the Akron Beacon Journal, Kiwanis Club of Akron, and the Greater Akron Chamber for being legacy sponsors. Please mark your calendar now for our next roundtable, scheduled on Thursday, October 15th, when the roundtable will host Craig Kenkel, Superintendent, Cuyahoga Valley National Park. He will present on the topic, Cuyahoga Valley in the 2016 National Park Service Centennial, Connecting to the Future. To make a reservation for any of the Akron Roundtable luncheons or to purchase a subscription to our luncheon series, please visit our website at akronroundtable.org. Today, I'm very pleased to host with the Akron Roundtable John Norquist, urban developer and author, whose remarks are titled The New Urbanism. I will now ask fellow Roundtable board member and Downtown Akron Partner President, Susie Graham, to introduce our presenter.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the staff and the board of directors of the Downtown Akron Partnership, we'd like to thank the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation for facilitating Mr. Norquist's visit to Akron and his appearance at Akron Roundtable today. John Norquist served as mayor of Milwaukee from 1988 to 2004. Under his leadership, Milwaukee experienced a decline in poverty, saw a boom in new downtown housing, and became a leading center of education and welfare reform. He's overseen a revision of the city's zoning code and reoriented development around walkable streets and public amenities such as the city's 3.1-mile Riverwalk. He's drawn widespread recognition for championing the removal of a 0.8-mile stretch of elevated freeway, clearing the way for an anticipated $250 million in development in the heart of Milwaukee. John Norquist was hired as president and CEO of the Congress of the New Urbanism in 2004, just one day after leaving office of the mayor. During his 10-year career at CNU, he worked to promote the new urbanism as an alternative to sprawl and an antidote to sprawl's social and environmental problems. A leader in national discussions on urban design and education issues, Mr. Norquist is the author of The Wealth of Cities, Revitalizing the Centers of American Life, and his taught courses in urban policy and urban planning at the University of Chicago, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee School of Architecture and Urban Planning, and at Marquette University. Mr. Norquist served in the Army Reserves from 1971 to 1977 and earned his undergraduate and master's degrees from the University of Wisconsin. He represented Milwaukee's South and West Sides in the Wisconsin legislature. He has also chaired the National League of Cities Task Force on Federal Policy and Family Poverty and served on the Amtrak Reform Council. I've had the pleasure of sharing a few conversations with John over the last 2 days as he has been introduced to our Akron community. His demonstrated success in Milwaukee was centered on understanding and advocating for the value of a city as a complex place to be built for and by and with its people. He advocates for the necessity of leaders and citizens alike to take responsibility for their futures, building upon the natural advantages of a city as its center of commerce and culture. I believe that great things are in progress and in store for Akron, and expect that Mayor Norquist's expertise and experience can catalyze more great ideas to move our city forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Norquist.
Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to be here. And I got here, people say, well, how long are you here? Well, I got here on Tuesday night, and I had a tour of Akron on Tuesday night, and then on Tuesday morning I had a tour of Akron, and then on Wednesday morning I had a tour of Akron, and Wednesday afternoon I had a tour of Akron. This morning I had another tour of Akron. So I'm starting to, at least have a beginning understanding. I want to thank Susie Graham and David Rebirth and Tony Trope or Trope? Trope. It should be an I instead of an E. Just and also Gary Rickle, who I had breakfast with him yesterday morning. And Gary and I were both 91 Bravo medics in the U.S. Army, so we were able to tell war stories. Neither of us was in combat, but we served the country, back in my case when the reserves didn't really do all that much like they do today. But it was fun to talk to Gary about that and also real estate. So, I feel very welcome here and I enjoy being here. My daughter and I drove through here about a month ago so I could look around Akron. So I gave myself a tour. So that's, altogether it's 5 tours of Akron. And let me tell you, that I think there's tremendous opportunity here. There's some things that have lagged behind, like not a lot of hotel rooms in the downtown, especially, I won't pass judgment on any existing hotel. But anyway, but they're coming. There's two new hotels coming online. They're both, one's a boutique hotel, an existing building, the other one is almost finished. Marriott hotel, they're both really cool settings. And that is just the beginning. There's a capacity for growth in your downtown that I think you're not aware of. It's going to happen. And there are a lot of things mistakes that were made in American cities over the last, since World War II. You made a lot of them, but don't feel bad. Most other cities made the same mistakes. The question is, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to build your way out of it? What changes you make? And the one thing, as Susie described, the one really good tool, I think, in all this is what adds value. What adds value to the city? What makes it a place with more jobs, more people, and a more vibrant place? And you should use that test for infrastructure expenditures that are made in the city. The idea of building a lot of great separated road infrastructure in Akron did not have value, in my opinion, nor did it in Milwaukee and a lot of other places, in Detroit especially. And transitioning from outdated road infrastructure to streets and boulevards and things where you can build value along the street, it will be a much better way to move forward on that. So I'm delighted to hear this change in progress on part of the Highway 59. The question is, what do you do about it? And you need to try to take advantage of the opportunity to create value and to also work it with other programs, private sector things that are going on, so it's not just an isolated thing. And what you replace it with is really important. So the whole community needs to be involved in it. It shouldn't be something decided in a back room somewhere. It's something everybody needs to be involved in. All right, so I've got a lot of slides to go through, which I'm going to do very quickly. But I wanted to praise the grocery store. I saw several times on my many tours. I said, what is this, a chain? I tell you. And the scenic railroad, which brings to mind the fact that until like the mid-50s, Akron had good passenger train service to Cleveland. And you don't have that now, but I'll just tell you, in Milwaukee, we have 8 trains a day round trip between downtown Milwaukee and downtown Chicago. And we have quite a few people that live in downtown Milwaukee because they commute. And some of the commuter routes that are around Chicago are, it's a longer trip time-wise than the 90 miles going down to Chicago. So I did it myself. The first 6 months I worked at CNU, I took the train every work day back and forth. Eventually moved to Chicago because it was just, hour and a half. But you're only 25, 28 miles, whatever, from Cleveland. So if you establish that, I know it would cost money. You'd have to go do whatever you can to assemble the capital. But who would ever do that? Well, the most conservative state in the country, Utah, they have a commuter rail that goes from Provo to Ogden, 28 round trips a day, 28 round trips. That's more round trips than most of the lines in the New York commuter network. Because the Mormons decided that the beautiful Jordan Valley named after the valley in the biblical place where John the Baptist did all this stuff. So they decided they didn't want it to be covered with junk space sprawl. That if they kept going the way they were going, they were just going to make more junk. And so they decided that they needed to have good transit in Salt Lake City. They have a big light rail system, and they have this incredible commuter line. So if people go between Provo, Salt Lake City, and Utah, a lot of them use it. And it's really helped to concentrate development in ways that are good for the cities and also some of the suburbs. So think about that. Maybe it wouldn't be impossible, seeing as California is sucking up billions of federal dollars for their train. Maybe Ohio couldn't figure out how to get enough money to reconnect Akron and Cleveland. Maybe even can't. And I'm telling you, it'll really be good for Akron, really be good for Cleveland too. So, and the world is changing. The millennials aren't as likely to buy a car. They want to live in a place that's interesting. They want to be able to walk out the front door. Not all of them, but a higher percentage of them than other age groups. And they want to go to the coffee shop. They want to be part of a place. And you'll notice this all over the country, that not just in big cities like San Francisco, which have been tremendously successful now for the last 20 years, but even in places like La Crosse, Wisconsin, or Chattanooga, Tennessee, the city has become more and more interesting, more and more walkable. It's not about big malls. People tried to build malls in the city; they almost all failed. I think there's one that didn't in San Diego, Horton Plaza. But other than that, Milwaukee's big mall. We're not like the suburbs. We're like the suburbs, and that didn't work out so well. So the mall has to become again part of the city with buildings and blocks. When you're in a city, you have buildings, you have property owners. It's not all one big place. It's a place that's a lot of complicated, interesting things, like your downtown. And so the failed efforts to make the city like the suburbia have disappeared, and the market is now there to form more urban. And it's not just the cities, even suburbs that are more urban are doing very well, like Evanston, Illinois, or Scarsdale, New York, that have urban centers where people want to be. It's boring to just be about parking lots and a plastic steel building, a parking lot, you drive home to your 4-car garage or whatever. For some people that's a good thing. They want it, fine. This is America. You can have whatever you want. But there's not enough urbanism. It's underserved. And if you serve it, you're going to have a lot more of it in your downtown and your other neighborhoods, like where the mustard seed is. All right, so this is a picture of a neighborhood in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's right near the downtown. It was designed by John Nolan, and John Nolan did some planning here. Not a lot came of it for some reason. Maybe the economy was bad right after he was here. But John Nolan's a great planner, and Charlotte did what he wanted. He not only planned the trees on the sidewalk, he even plotted out the trees in the private property. I don't know if you have to, but if you have a tree canopy like this neighborhood has never declined. It's never been in trouble, and it was well planned, very walkable. And Charlotte, has a lot of neighborhoods that aren't so walkable, but the ones that are have really held their value and increased their value. But there was a period, and I just want to go through the horrible mistakes that were made. Frederick Law Olmsted did this boulevard, and he did it, and it was beautiful. And then Robert Moses, the great highway builder from New York, came to Buffalo and decided to do this to it. So they cut all the trees down And then they dug a trench and put a freeway in the middle of it, and the neighborhood just rotted on both sides. It just disappeared. I mean, it's still there, but it's all distressed real estate. And that's what happens. And in New Orleans, the Claiborne Avenue, which was the upper middle class black Creole neighborhood with 2,000 trees over the 3-mile stretch. Louis Armstrong lived along the street. He had 247 businesses along Claiborne Avenue. And then they decided that the biggest problem New Orleans had in the mid-60s was congestion. They wanted to defeat congestion, so they cut all the trees down and then put this thing in there. And there's now 27 businesses where there had been 247. The streets all distressed real estate. But fortunately, in New Orleans, renewal, they get to renew every time a hurricane hits. So the invocation is, could we have a hurricane? Yeah. But not one like the last, not like the tree because there was a lot of death, but there were other hurricanes that actually did some good, helped them make it a better city. So they just put it back like it was, with the neutral ground in the middle. And so there's a lot of discussion. The alderman in the district supports it, and maybe it'll happen. It's not just about roads. It's in the 1930s, the Polish Kashubs, they're called, had this island, Jones Island in Milwaukee. There were about 140 people living there. There were fishermen, as they called them back then. And the city thought it was too cluttered, and so they tore it down and put a road there and wiped out the Kashub village, which would be a huge attraction. Some of you have been to Toronto and seen the islands where the little munchkin houses are. What a great tourist attraction that is. So there's a lot of damage done, but maybe the worst example in America is Detroit. This is Woodward Avenue in 1946, right after World War II. Detroit was one of the richest cities in America. It had 300 miles of streetcar, suburban train system. It had a radial street system that Woodward planned with Gratiot, Woodward, all the great streets that radiated out from downtown. It had 3 department stores, Kearns, Crowley's, and Hudson's, which was the second biggest department store in America, second only to Macy's. It was crowded. Pedestrians, hard to walk on the sidewalk, there's so many people. So they set out to solve their congestion problem, and they succeeded. It's the most successful congestion relief program on earth. They got rid of it. There is no congestion in Detroit anymore. They did all this stuff. Until they opened a urban, or whatever it's called. I always forget the name of all the grocery. There's this big boutique grocery store they built on Woodward Avenue with help from the Kresge Foundation. For many years, there wasn't one retail outlet in the entire city of Detroit with 50,000 square feet. That's what they achieved by decongesting Detroit. So this is Berlin at the, I guess, we have one there too. 1945, at the end of the war, about 70% of the city was either destroyed totally or destroyed so much that they had to rebuild the buildings from the ground up. And this is Berlin today. This is Potsdamer Platz, where the wall was. And in 1989, the wall went right through it. When the communism failed and the wall fell down, they replaced it with development. They have the biggest train station in Europe under the street at this location, Potsdamer Platz. This is Poland at the end of the war. Hitler ordered that every stone be torn apart. They even tore down the 13th century King's Castle right in the old town. Took all the stones and took them apart. They didn't get the Bristol Hotel, which was where the Wehrmacht chief staff was staying. They didn't have time to blow that up, but most of the buildings they destroyed. And even under communism, they rebuilt the old city by 1951. And then Rotterdam, which 2 days after the Dutch surrendered, the German Air Force came in and bombed the Rotterdam to show what they could do to Paris. They took pictures, like they took this picture and leafleted Paris so the French would know as the German army approached that they maybe shouldn't fight. So this is Rotterdam today. It's an industrial town, but I've been there and walked the streets. It's a beautiful city. It's all rebuilt. And then in the U.S., we have Detroit, which was the most successful city in World War II in terms of producing war material. It produced war material not just for our army, but for the British, for the Russians. The Red Army had our trucks. They loved the trucks. They didn't like the tanks because they would freeze. They developed air cooling for their own tanks, but they loved our Jeeps and our trucks. We gave them a lot of stuff, and a lot of it was produced in Detroit. At the end of the war, it was so rich, and that's the way a lot of it looks today. It's reviving, the guy from Cleveland, Dan, that guy. He's been a big help, and they're starting to come back. But, just think about it. We won World War II. When you look at Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Dresden, all these places that were totally destroyed, they're all built back, and we won World War II, and it looks like World War II happened in Detroit. And, it really is sad commentary. And one of the reasons for that is that people didn't think about adding value when they were building infrastructure. Invest in infrastructure, and all that mattered was moving cars fast. Or in the case of Milwaukee's cashews, getting something they thought was, not like the rest of the city, so they had to eliminate it. What you see here is San Francisco, where the Market Street, the Embarcadero Freeway was built on top of the beautiful Embarcadero, cutting off the views of the bay. Really stupid. And it caused all the real estate values to drop. The place looked awful. Now it's gone. They just put the boulevard back, basically. Real estate values went up 350% the year after they decided to get rid of the freeway. They hadn't even torn it down yet, and they already went up. And then the Central Artery, the big neighborhood campaign, Reimagine, Connect, Restore, it was also damaged by the earthquake in 1989. The neighborhood didn't want it rebuilt, and they put in a boulevard instead with property along the side, really cool neighborhood. And it all works really well. The traffic distributes better. The freeway is really a rural thing. It concentrates the traffic, and wherever the nodes are, there tends to be a lot of congestion. The other problem with freeways is that when you need them the most at rush hour, that's when they clog up the most. So like you take Hurricane Rita when it hit Houston, and the freeways were supposed to be the way you get out of town. And Rita was coming to Houston. The order went out, get out of town, evacuate, this is not optional, go. And so everybody tried to use it. And the freeways were there, they were defense highways. If the Russians launched from Kamchatka, 28 minutes later it hit Houston. So you were supposed to be able to get out of town before the bomb hit. Well, Rita was coming, and it was like a 18-hour warning before the hurricane would hit. And it didn't work, it just coagulated. Everything stopped. There's too much overwhelmed the system. Whereas a complex grid of streets, people have more choices about where they go. It actually works better. That's why when you go to Europe, in the big cities in Europe, there's no freeways within the outer beltway. There's freeways outside the outer beltway, and there's freeways between cities, but within the cities you're not. And I'll tell you why, because there's three basic purposes for a street in every context. One is moving traffic. That's a good thing to do. People, goods. The other thing is selling stuff, the market purpose. You want the street to perform, a commercial street, you want it to perform. And socially, people get together, like you have the rubber ducks, and people go to a game, but sometimes they come to the game early just so they can hang out on Main Street, or they stay late. Maybe they shouldn't do that, but they stay late on Main Street. They didn't have enough beer in the game. But that's social, and it makes you love being in Akron when you have these interactions, whether it's in the downtown or one of the neighborhoods. The most dramatic example of transformation nation, and maybe it's the most relevant to Akron, is Seoul, South Korea. After the Korean War, they decided to build a big freeway right through the middle of Seoul. It was paid for in large part by American taxpayers. We were trying to help out our allies, the South Koreans. So there's this big freeway, 160,000 cars a day. 2001, Lee Bach was elected mayor. He hated the freeway, said take it out. They replaced it with 2 moving lanes at surface, at grade, that connected with all the streets, with and the creek that had been built, or the river that had the freeway on top of it, was then liberated. When he was a little kid, he remembered the river, and the river was gone, and he wanted it back. So by 2003, he had gotten rid of the road infrastructure. By 2005, when this picture was taken, they already had billions of dollars of real estate value and a great tourist attraction. People love having water. It's now the 2nd biggest tourist attraction in South Korea. In fact, it is the 2nd biggest tourist attraction in all of Korea, because North Korea doesn't have any tourist attractions other than Dennis Rodman. And that's the guy who did it, Lee Myung-bak, who later became president of South Korea. And look how happy he is, because he did something brave and creative, and he created value. And downtown Seoul is just hopping. They've now taken down 12 more segments of freeway in Seoul, a city of 12 million people. Okay, now I'm going to really quickly go through modernists, because a lot of this is affected by the modernist ideology. Guys who are socialists, some of them are communists, but a lot of it underwrites what we consider the most conservative development patterns today. Walter Gropius was head of the Bauhaus in Germany. When the Nazis came in, he was a social democrat. He had to get the hell out of there. He did. He went to Harvard, wrote the curriculum, and in the curriculum they put all kinds of stuff, including that you shouldn't have terminated vistas, which he looked at it like imperial architecture from World War I, the disastrous war of World War I. And he was absolutely right that that was disastrous. And the empires did so much damage to the continent. But he didn't like their architecture as a result of it. So he took that idea and then just, if you look in the United States in the post-World War II period, there's no terminated vistas built anywhere except in 2 places. One of them is this one in Orlando, and the other one is Anaheim, because Walt Disney knew that that had a value. Here's a terminated vista in Italy, a drawing in northern Italy. The Chicago Board of Trade built in 1925, terminated vista on LaSalle Street. You walk down LaSalle Street toward this view, and it feels so good. It's such a great place to walk, to see this. And the real estate all reflects the fact that people want to be there. Those buildings sell. Or Amsterdam in the 16th century, 17th century. This is a great example. So if we could do this in the 17th century, why can't we do it today in America? And the fact is, we are. And it's not because of the design schools, it's not because of Harvard or anybody else, it's because of Target and Kohl's. And this is a mall in Gaithersburg that was removed, and they put in streets and blocks. And the retailers, they don't want to be in a big building together anymore, but Target wants to be on that T intersection with the name Target, and Kohl's wants to be on the T intersection. And so this is coming back. It's just a standard form. But there are a lot of things like that that were done in the 20th century. This is Santiago Calatrava's edition of the Milwaukee Art Museum that lines up perfectly with the center lane of the street. Because even though he's a contemporary architect, he believes in urbanism. And so he did that without having to be begged to do it. All right, so Corbusier was the other great modernist, and he built his student, Matsusugi, I forgot the rest of his name. Anyway, he built Pruitt-Igoe in 1955 in St. Louis. They tore down the neighborhood, put in these institutional-looking buildings. 20 years later, nobody wanted to live there, so they tore them down. On the other hand, in 1917, public housing was built in Camden, New Jersey. And it is still there today. And poor people in the most rundown city in all of New Jersey. It's called Yorkshire Village or Fairview Village. It has two different names. But it's very successful because it is good design, a good urban plan with blocks and streets and amenities like coffee shops and so forth, even in a poor neighborhood. So Corbusier gave us the Great Separated Street. This is a drawing from 1922, where the idea of the freeway was more predictive than maybe prescriptive, but it predicted what would happen, particularly in the U.S. This is the Jefferson Davis Highway right near the Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C. You can't walk along that street. It's illegal for me to have taken that picture, but fortunately the statute of limitations is run, so I'm okay. This is Oscar Niemeyer, and Oscar, the communist modernist, and died a couple of years ago at the age of 104. He did Brasilia, and Brasilia has all grade separated streets. All the major streets are grade separated, and it's the most lifeless place in Brazil. You have to go to the suburbs to find your bossa nova and jazz and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's an urban form, doesn't belong in the city. It's very unpleasant, destroys property value, creates noise and dirt, and people end up insisting on these sound barriers, which the sound barriers were actually developed as an idea back in Berlin in 1961, the prototype. And in fact, if Erich Honecker, the communist chief of Berlin, of East Germany, came back to life, he would be very disoriented in Berlin because the wall's gone. But he could go to San Antonio. This is Martin Luther King Drive. This is how we honor Dr. King in San Antonio, where Gary and I went to medical school. So it doesn't have to be that way. Barcelona is a beautiful city, fabulous real estate market, all kinds of people, rich people, poor people, middle income people, all living together in the city in Barcelona. And they can move more traffic on some of these boulevards. Oh God. I turn off all your phones. Whatever that was. Sorry. Okay, so you know, when you're thinking about what do you do when you replace 59, your former mayor, strong mayor, you have to take the next step. What do you replace it with? So you can look at other cities. Barcelona's one. Or if you want to go real small, you can look at Hamburg, New York, outside of Buffalo. The New York DOT wanted to go to 4-lane, big arterial there, and Hamburg fought and got a 2-lane street, so the barber shop and the coffee shop and the bakery and all that are doing really well, and they have parking in front of the stores. You need parking, but that on-street parking is what people really like. They want to just pull up, or at least have the illusion that if they pull up in front of a place, they might get a parking spot. If you take the parking away totally, they can't even get the illusion. But usually we do this, you know, with the giant street with the double left turn lanes. We worry all about traffic, and I can tell you that Akron's traffic is the least of your problems. But you know, you end up with a 72-foot arterial with a 100-foot clear zone on each side that supposedly makes it safer, but all that does is make people drive faster. So if they do have an accident, it's very likely to be fatal. You know, the idea that making the big roads makes them safer is, especially in urban context, is not a mistake. And you know, pedestrianism on one of these huge streets is really tough. You know, it makes you feel like a criminal suspect to walk along the street like that. So, but help is on the way. Things are getting better. Your own engineers here at the City of Akron know about this book and use it. The Institute of Traffic Engineers Urban Street Guide, which says it's okay to have 10-foot lanes, it's okay to have tight turning radii, that congestion isn't the only reason, decongestion isn't the only reason to build a road or a street. And so things are changing for the better. You have a palette. You can work with things in a way that was different than 30 years ago, where people were beating their head against the wall trying to figure out why their cities were dying. we know why that happened, and we know how to change it. And we have engineers and planners in this town who know that, you know, they don't agree. I had lunch with some of them yesterday. We don't agree with everything. But, you know, there wasn't any fisticuffs or anything like that. All right, but the old hierarchy of roads, this is from the Wisconsin DOT, which still uses it. You know, you have the freeway, the arterial road, the service road, and then the grid is like an afterthought. But the grid is where all the value is. And it's really important to understand that complex grid that is a setting for development. Like Washington, D.C. with the Longfellow Plan, which even when they had a crack-addicted mayor, remember Mayor Marion Barry, who actually, other than being crack addicted, I met him a couple of times. He was very polite. He's a very nice guy. I sat next to him. You know, I mean, there's worse things, I suppose. Not much, but anyway, even then, they had a fairly healthy real estate market despite that. Now it's really gotten rich. This is Wicker Park in Chicago. One moving lane in each direction on these three streets that come together, maybe the coolest neighborhood in Chicago. And you can park 24 hours. There's no time of day restrictions on parking because the retail merchants demanded that. And they're the ones who show up at the Alderman's fundraiser. This is where Chicago corruption pays off. They show up at the fundraiser. The traffic professionals aren't there. So they you know, it's just a wonderful place. Even on a Monday night, the restaurants are packed. Toronto, some of you have been there, like Dundas, hopelessly congested. This is in Chinatown. It's congested, but it's not just congested with traffic. It has money, people, real estate value, all those things are there. Congestion isn't all bad. You have to think about it. Every place that's valuable in America tends to have congestion. Greenwich Village is congested. Detroit isn't congested. You know, so they put it together in their head. So I'm going to skip forward because I don't want to go in the Q&A part. So this is actually in Erie, just north of here, and they have a bypass or an overpass they decided to close, but a lot of people want to turn it into a walking path. It connects two neighborhoods, and so sometimes old infrastructure can be recommissioned. So that should be part of the thinking on 59 too. What do you want to keep? What do you want to get rid of? And why? I mean, just look at the High Line in New York. That's the way it looked when my sister snuck me up there when it was illegal, you know, like 25 years ago. And it was really cool then. And now it's one of the biggest attractions in New York. And then streams, you know, we've learned not to ruin streams. We try to create, and this is getting into the CSO issue, you want your streams to absorb water. You want your land to absorb water, and that's part of the CSO answer. A lot of it's probably going to have to be underground structure, deep tunnel, things like that. We're talking about it's very expensive, but part of it can be stuff that actually adds value. So, you know, the Army Corps used to try to drain all these wetlands. Now they know they're really valuable for pollution purposes, and also they're valuable just to add value to real estate and everything. So we don't do this much anymore. And in Milwaukee, we've gotten rid of most of those, almost all of the concrete linings on these streams, and that creates more absorption, and it also creates great recreational opportunities. And along the river, we have people watching people. So if you own a boat, you want to have an audience for your music, your lifestyle, whatever, you go down the river and you got all these condos and apartments looking at you, and the people in the condos are grilling a bratwurst. That's all they eat there. And they, you know, and they want to be seen by the people in the boats, and it just creates a whole scene. So now Milwaukee is one of the great destinations on the Great Lakes. There's another part of it, the 28-acre Beer Line B, which was developed in 3 years by 6 different developers in 6 different parcels. And we did a pre-code, we did the streets, we did the sewer, it was the old-fashioned way, had all that stuff in place, and sold the land at market value. And we had $350 million of new development right next to our downtown in 3 years. And that's what can happen when the market wants it. And the market wants it. And you better think about that. The market for single-family, large lot housing is basically saturated. And you need to do what the market is demanding. And so the other thing we did with this was we have a dam that was polluting the stream and causing problems. We eliminated the dam and created this road. Once you get to North Avenue in Milwaukee, it goes from intense urban all of a sudden to complete. You could be in northern Wisconsin, you know, with the loons, bearing loons that far south. But you know, and you can fit. This is in Milwaukee. Kayaking, fishing, that's what happens. And you have the urban juxtaposed with the natural rural. It's just absolutely so satisfying. All right, now I'm getting toward the end. The development process is really important. You need to have a good code that does what you want, so you don't want giant parking lots in front of buildings. You want them to be up on the curb when you're downtown, you know, things like that. You get that in place, but then you don't want to torture the developers. My building inspector drew this drawing that shows all the places you had to go to get a permit. I met with some developers from the suburbs and said, why aren't you developing in the city? And they said, well, because it's just so hard. You make it so difficult. You're like tripping us up every step of the way. I said, what's it like? They said, well, it's like being shot in a firing squad. That's why we don't come around. So we simplified it. We put everything in one building except the plumbing section because the plumbers union had enough power to block us from moving. They wanted to stay in the same room they were in before. Okay, so everything, and we had greeters, and they still have it. When you bring a permit, you want to fix expand your kitchen or build a giant development or whatever you want to do. There's somebody there to welcome you. Thank you for wanting to add value to our city. And you know, there might be problems, but let's work them out as quickly as we can. And that's made a big difference. All right, then I'm going to skip something here, which I could talk about another time if I ever talk about it again. But because I'm going to skip to this. You know, everybody talks about infill housing, affordable housing. But affordable housing, one of the ways to get to that is developers being able to build and not making everything so damn complicated. And in Buffalo, they had this building, a rehab build, a factory building, Art Space Buffalo Lofts. Great. It's wonderful. It's got a coffee shop in it. But the cost was astronomical. It was like building something in Park Avenue, New York. And here's the financing. You know, all these things listed, one after the other, almost impossible to build. And these are the funders. All these foundations had to come together just to do one building. And this is taken off of their brochure, which they're bragging about. They had all these funders. We need to change that because the market wants this very stuff. You don't need to go through all these gyrations. You need to meet the market. You don't need to subsidize developers. You don't need to bribe them to come to your city, because when you do that, you know what you're saying about your city. That it doesn't work, that the only way it works is if you take Akron taxpayers and shake them upside down, take money out of their pocket, and then give it to some developer. And the developer that's like that is really good at sucking up, but he might not be very good at development. And the thing we did in Milwaukee, once we cut back on the subsidy stuff, we had a whole bunch of small developers who couldn't afford a lawyer, couldn't afford a lobbyist, and they started building something. I told my Department of City Development, which does the permitting and all that stuff, I said, look, if something's built and there's no groundbreaking and no ribbon cutting, you get extra credit. But if there's a groundbreaking or ribbon cutting, I'm going to be giving you a dirty look, because I don't like going to those things. You ever really like seeing politicians? They're showing ribbon cutting, you know, does that get votes? I don't think so. But if you have a lot of development going on, the city's getting healthy, people feel good about being in it, they're going to their restaurants, they're filling up the new hotels, all that stuff, the mayor will get elected as long as they didn't get in the way of it. You don't need to grab for the credit, and you don't need to subsidize stuff. All you do is turn into a subsidy machine then. So the market wants it. And just another example of that is Target. They're going into downtown situations. This is the old Carson Pier Scott. They're in that building on the first 2 floors in the basement. Above them is apartments, and at the very top are the offices of the Art Institute. And that was built with a market development. And there's Target is in downtown, all over the United States in downtown situations, in neighborhood situations, in downtown suburbs. Kohl's is doing it. A lot of them are doing it. And actually, if your downtown really comes to life, you'll get some of the bigger retail stuff. You're not going to end up in like a shopping center and having all that right away. But you'll start seeing retail come when more people live downtown. And it'll help the whole city. You don't want to have a donut hole city. It's not even good for the most farther out suburbs. The healthier it is, the stronger you're going to be. So, this is my book, which I happen to have. I have one copy with me, but if you want to buy it, it's online. And it has a lot of these ideas in it. Finally, Akron. It's cool. I like it. I like what a lot of your creative people are doing around here. Susie's got her handle on what the strategy ought to be. And everybody ought to get involved. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to have a lot of fun developing this city and making it something nobody feels sorry for. Thank you.
We're running a little bit short on time as far as questions. However, John, I want to thank you for being with us today. On behalf of the Akron Roundtable, it is my pleasure to present you with a contemplative sun as a memento of your visit with us this afternoon. We won't cut a ribbon or anything here. This celebratory work of art was designed exclusively for the Akron Roundtable by a local artist and craftsman down here.
Fantastic. You know, the towels weren't so big, so I think I have just enough room.
I know we weren't able to get to questions today. However, we invite the audience to join John for a post-presentation discussion right here at the Quaker Station, hosted by the Downtown Akron Partnership. This discussion will take place immediately following this luncheon, and it's in the room right off the main entryway here. We tried to come up with a better name for that room, but it's like the post-room or whatever. So, but it's very nice in there.